providers and school boards by email as prescribed by the Planning Act. A sign was posted along the frontage of the property on August 19, 2021, and notice was advertised in the newspaper on August 19, 2021. The provided 20-day notice for the public meeting, this provided 20 days notice for the public meeting, and this meeting is therefore properly constituted as required by the Planning Act. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment would be to amend the residential type 1 R1 zoning provision on the subject lands to permit a maximum lot coverage of 45%, excluding porches, whereas the maximum requirement is 35% with porches included. Permit an increased building height to 11.5 meters from the 10-meter maximum, reduce the minimum rear yard setback from the 7.6 meter requirement to 7 meters for lots less than 30 meters in depth, as well reduce the interior side yard minimum setback from 1.8 meters to 1.2 meters. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment would further permit an increase in the encroachment of porches into both front and rear yards from the 1.2 meter requirement to 1.8 meters, as well as to the interior side yards to 1.8 meters where no encroachments are permitted. As a result of the circulation of notice of public meeting, the following written comments were received. Letters of support, none. Letters of objection, the NVCA, letters of no objection, it's important. The NVCA, Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, provided they have no concerns with this application. Enbridge Gas Inc. expressed that they do not object to the proposed application. However, they reserve their right to amend their development conditions. Letters of concern, Public Works Engineering staff have provided that they are not in position to support any of the proposed amendments at this time. Letters of objection, 8 public objections have been received over the phone and or through email or letter. Ms. Hannah, have we received any further letters or correspondence in regard to this application?
We haven't received any further letters.
Thank you. Town planning staff will now make a brief presentation and will provide further details with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendments. I turn it over to staff. Thank you. Do staff have anything to say on this?
Yes, we do have a presentation. I don't know if Dina is sharing that. Okay.
I can if you like, Samantha, or if you would prefer to.
Yeah, I can. I'm not sure how.
Up to you, which is easier. If you want me to, I can.
Yeah, would you be able to? Sorry.
Okay.
There
we go. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is the public meeting for application Z05-21 for a zoning bylaw amendment made by Sunnyview Estates Construction Inc. for lands located within the Gulfview Estates draft approved plan of subdivision. So first we will introduce the application on behalf of the applicant. I will then present the subject lands and proposed development and provide a summary of the comments received today. I will then outline the next steps, and then there will be time for questions and submissions. The purpose of a public meeting is required under the Planning Act for zoning bylaw amendment applications. Town staff are introducing the applicant's proposal to council and the general public. This is also an opportunity to provide for sharing of written comments and the making of oral submissions to coordinated committee. This application for zoning bylaw amendment Z05-21 was submitted on behalf of Sunnyview Estates Construction Inc. in June of 2021 and was deemed complete in July of 2021. The subject property is located on the north side of Golf Course Road, south of River Road West and east of Wesley Avenue. And the application proposes variances for increases in the permitted lot coverage and height of the proposed dwelling units, as well as reductions in the minimum rear yard setbacks for lots with less than 30 meters of depth. The application further proposes to permit an increase in the encroachment of porches into the front, rear, and exterior side yards. So currently the subject lands do not have a municipal address. There are 4 parcels of land that are subject to the requests. The 4 parcels of land are subject to draft plan approval and have an overall area of approximately 55,580 square meters. 3 of the lots front onto Golf Course Road, while 1 will connect to Wesley Avenue and Douglas Road, sorry. The surrounding land uses include commercial uses to the north, as well as a number of proposed developments across River Road West, existing residential to the east, and as well as vacant lands, existing residential to the west, and existing residential and residential construction to the south. Public joint notice of complete application and notice of public meeting was issued on August 19th, 2021 by publication in the newspaper, mailed to landowners within 120 meters, and the installation of signage on the lands. This property is designated as residential and natural heritage system category 1 within the official plan, and is also located within a special hydrogeological study area. The designations surrounding the subject property include district commercial, residential, natural heritage system category 1, and campground commercial. The uses permitted in the low density residential designation include detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, duplex dwellings, and accessory dwelling units. And the uses permitted in natural heritage system category 1 include existing agricultural uses, forestry, passive outdoor recreation, public works and uses, scientific research and education, and wildlife management activities compatible with the conservation and preservation of the natural flora and fauna. And no development or site alteration shall be allowed in natural heritage system category 1 lands other than public works and uses and those structures necessary for flood and erosion control. This property is zoned as residential type 1 hold within the zoning bylaw, and the zoning surrounding the area includes residential type 1, district commercial and district commercial hold, institutional, environmental protection, and environmental protection exception 4. Uses permitted within a residential type 1 zone include single detached dwelling units, 1 attached accessory dwelling unit, accessory uses directly related to the uses permitted within the R1 zone, home occupations, public uses, and bed and breakfasts. So right here is an image of the draft plan of subdivision on the left. And so the lots that are outlined in red here are where the zoning bylaw amendment is applicable. And then to the right here is an image that shows the proposed building elevations for the development. This is a conceptual siting study that was provided by the applicants, and these diagrams show the differences in the siting proposed for different housing types for the subdivision. So what is being applied for is some site-specific performance standards. First, what is being proposed is an increase in the lot coverage to 45%, not including porches, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 35%, including porches, is required. A reduction in the minimum rear yard depth from the 7.6 meter requirement to 7 meters for lots that are less than 30 meters in depth. A reduced minimum interior side yard width of 1.2 meters, whereas 1.8 meters is required. An increased front yard and rear yard maximum porch encroachment of 1.8 meters, whereas 1.2 meters is permitted. And an increased exterior side yard porch encroachment of 1.8 meters, where no encroachments are permitted, as well as an increase in the maximum building height to 11.5 meters, whereas 10 meters is permitted. So staff has received some comments. NVCA staff have noted that they do not have any concerns with the application, and Bridge Gas Inc. Does not object to the proposed application. However, they reserve the right to amend their development conditions. Resident concerns received include the increased height and density, the reduced rear yard setbacks and porch encroachments, the impact on the character of the neighborhood and privacy, the environmental impacts, the possible reduction in property values, the loss of wildlife habitat and green space and trees, the impact on the appeal of the area, concerns with traffic and safety, disruption of the enjoyment of the current properties, a loss of recreational space, as well as concerns with fire risks and water pressure. Since finalizing the presentation, we've also received comments back from Public Works, who've noted that at this time they're not in a position to support any of the proposed amendments and will only be in a position to support any of the requested amendments once the comments are addressed through detailed engineering design for the subdivision application. To conclude, this public meeting is required under the Planning Act. Town staff are presenting the applicant's proposal. Town staff have not completed a detailed review of the application, and staff will provide a recommendation report to council at a later date. For the next steps, planning staff will continue receiving and considering comments from the public and agency and departmental staff, and planning staff will prepare and submit a recommendation report. And that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. If we can just end the slideshow at this moment.
Stop share.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. The property owner and representatives on their behalf, including the consulting planners from Innovative Planning Solutions, Mr. Darren Valleja and Mr. Jack Krubnik, are in attendance. Do the applicant and the representatives wish to provide any further details with respect to the proposed development? If so, unmute yourself and come on in. There you are.
Hi, good to see you again. So we do have a brief presentation if we can provide one.
Yes.
Great. So I'm assuming you would need me to share screen as well.
Yes, please.
Okay. Perfect. And do you see that presentation in front of you? Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, Chair, and members of Council. So staff gave a fantastic presentation, so I'm just going to provide somewhat of a brief overview of this application. As you know as well, our property is located on River Road North is on the northern periphery of our property. I'm not sure if you could see my cursor, but also we have Golf Course Road running along its eastern and southern flank, and some residential uses on its western flank. The subject properties are again identified in red, similar to the staff presentation here. They are the subject of the zoning bylaw amendment application before council. And this is the official plan designation. As you do know, that these properties are presently designated residential, consistent with the residential designations around them. That central kind of purple spine is that natural heritage system, which generally wooded lands, and to the north is the district commercial, which has various commercial uses which support the residential in behind it, such as our subject property. And once again, this is the zoning map to show you that it is consistently zoned R1 with the surrounding land uses, and the EP lands you see here were those purple lands you saw in the official plan designation. I believe these are already dedicated to the town, and so the town is in ownership of these lands. This is our draft plan of subdivision. We are presently in the draft plan of subdivision process. So there's a number of reports and plans that have been requested within this process. So we are in the midst of providing those to town staff. And so this draft plan of subdivision also identifies the parcels that are being proposed on site, as well as the new roads that will service these new residential lots. As you've heard, I'll go through this quickly. The minor amendments to the residential R1 zone being sought are an increase in lot coverage from 35% to 45%. The minimum rear yards being reduced from 7.6 to 7 for the lots that are all the lots that are less than 30 meters in depth, minimum interior side yard reduction from 1.8 to 1.2 meters. Both the front and rear porches are being sought to increase an encroachment from 1.2 to 1.8 meters, making them somewhat a little wider and more functional. And interior side yard encroachment is being sought where one is presently not permitted. And the building heights are being sought to increase from 10.10 to 11.5. And you'll see in the kind of elevations that will provide you is to provide some variety in the built form. Here is a slide from Hunt Design Associates, who are the architects on this file. And as you can see, they're providing, this slide I think is pretty effective in showing the variety of architectural expression that's able to be permitted and on site, and gives you again demonstration of the kind of craftsmanship that Fernbrook Homes is known for. I believe this development will be a benefit to the community and shows you how the town of Wasaga Beach is a desirable community to live in. So I will now take you through some site plans in the next few slides. And generally what they'll show is just that the lot frontages vary somewhat on the draft plan of subdivision. You will also see that there's a lot of consistency in the plans, such as they all have an interior garage for parking of vehicles and an exterior driveway as well for vehicle use. There is a porch both on the rear and the front. I believe this provides social interaction and safety for the community to have a porch function like this. There is a generally consistent 6-meter front yard for landscaping and amenity space, access to the rear yard through the side of the home, through the side yard setback, and at the rear again you have room for amenity and landscaping. As you can see again, as these lot frontages vary, sometimes the depths do as well, and provides us opportunities to work out or provides opportunities, my apologies, for the variety of architectural styles that we saw on that elevation slide. This is the type C, which is 7.3 meter frontage. And finally, we have a type D, which is an 18-meter frontage, the widest lot frontage within these designs. Now, the proposed application is intended to facilitate a zoning bylaw amendment to permit these minor changes to the existing zoning and to facilitate the residential development that's before you. We do feel, I'm not going to go through that list again, but we do feel that the amendments are minor in nature and appropriate and desirable to the community and the town of Wasaga Beach, while being consistent with the policy and intent of the parent R1 zone. And we hope that you agree that the proposal will add variety to the urban fabric and represents good planning. Now, Darren and I are available for your commentary and for your questions, and we'll do our best to answer those. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you could stop sharing your screen, we will get to questions and comments a bit later. So thank you for that. As requested in the notice of public meeting, as of 4:30 on Tuesday, September 7th, 4 residents have registered in advance to make oral submissions at today's virtual planning meeting. I'll turn it over actually to the town clerk to introduce the presenters, please. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Chair Foster. We do have, I believe, 4 members of the public that have signed up to make some comments or ask some questions. And if I could please have Wendy Walker show your video and turn on your microphone, and please address council. Thank you.
Okay, let's start my video. Having problems with my video.
We see you and we hear you.
Okay, good. Okay. It's unfortunate that this property will be destroyed for all of its trees, for the animals and birds that live there. And having bigger houses on small lots is not conducive for any of us, I don't think at all. This tree destruction along the back of the lots of Wesley Avenue from the corner up to Douglas are the most impacted by all the trees removals and bigger houses, which will give us zero privacy. those that will be lost. So it's highly unlikely that this will be stopped. None of us really feel that we can stop this, but we are asking that some trees along the back be left closer to the fence lines, and or new trees planted to obstruct the decks that are going to be looking down into our yards, and or some type of fencing put across the back to separate us from these short lot lines. There's nothing we can do about the height. It's unfortunate. I think bigger is not necessarily better. So yes, I'm absolutely opposed to what's happening, but hopefully we can move forward and have some kind of compromise with trees or fencing to be taken into consideration.
Thank you for that. I will remind you and the public that no decision has actually been made on this
Correct.
yet.
Correct.
We're taking your information. We'll go back to the developer and staff. And sorry, my phone's ringing in the background. A proposal will come to us in the future, but thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Chair Foster, and thank you, Wendy. I'll get you to turn your video off. And the next speaker, we have Andre Aberdeen. Andre, if you're there, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I totally understand that the town is growing, and there's always going to be a need for growth in terms of amenities and in terms of housing. My main concern has to do with the to follow up with what Wendy was talking about in regards to the wildlife. Our house backs onto the dunes, and it's a plethora of wildlife that we've seen over the years. We've been here for 4 years. So my main concern is in terms of what exactly is going to be done in order to mitigate the impact on the wildlife. And then the second question has to do with timing. How has a timeline been determined as to when this development will start? Which areas are going to be impacted first? Those are more of my concerns at this time.
Thank you for that. For the timing thing, nothing has been decided as far as I'm aware of. So I will pass it to, would any of the staff or proponent like to comment on that, please? If not, we'll take it under consideration and it will come back to council.
I won't say much on this item other than to say that the draft plan of subdivision process is, some of the studies are still underway. And I believe the environmental impact study needs to be peer reviewed as well. And that draft plan of subdivision process has been extended till the end of 2022, I believe. So, you know, certainly nothing before that time.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Jamie Babin. If you're there, Jamie.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm basically in agreement with, I think it was Leslie Walker. So my concerns are exactly the same. I am the conjoining property off of Golf Course Road. And I as well feel that privacy will be an issue, especially with, I believe it's 6 or 7 homes that will be backing onto the whole side of my property. And from what I understand is their backyards are going to be basically in my side yard, my driveway, that kind of thing. So although I'm all for change and growing with Sega Beach, I would still like to see some privacy kept with our property.
Hi, Jamie. Sorry, you're breaking up a wee bit.
Space in between. Also, like
Hi, Jamie. If you can hear me,
trails. It's a huge like of our community. Oh.
There you go.
Hi.
Perhaps, Jamie, if you could
There you
move
go.
maybe where you get a little more reception, we'll be able to hear you better.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, did you hear anything I said, or do I have to start over?
Not from the beginning. You were,
Oh.
yeah, you had agreed with Wendy, and we're talking about the, impact to your backyards and side yards, having the taller houses behind you.
Yeah, so basically, I agree with Wendy, and we're all for change and growth of Wasaga Beach. We would just ideally like to see a green space in between, some trees kept. Like that's a huge, like this is my backyard. Like, that's all treed and that's all going to be gone. So it's very disappointing that, that's what it has to come to. And yeah, that's my biggest concern is the privacy that we once had, we won't have anymore. And the whole nature aspect of it as well, where, the community uses that space right now to ride their bikes, to go on a nature walk, to see the wildlife, and we won't have.
All right, thank you for those comments. Like I said, this does get referred back to staff and the developer for discussion, and no decision has been made, so we will take those into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Chair Foster. And we have one more speaker, and that is Michelle Bravakis. Michelle, if you're there again.
Oh, I can't start my video for some reason.
Oh, that's okay. You can go ahead.
Good morning to all. Oh, start your video. Okay. Sorry. There we go. There we go. My name is Michelle Bravakis. I live at 13 Longdale Road, which is sort of in the center of all of this construction that is proposed. I do have several concerns. They include privacy, creating a complete community, the canopy and tree protection, the construction being done in phases, and the issue of secondary or third-party damage due to fires. We'll start with the fire, actually, close to home for our community, as last week we had a fire in the West End in one of our newer subdivisions. One home was totally burnt to the ground, and two other buildings were also severely damaged by this fire. My concern with these setback amendments would be that this would cause that to happen basically here if a fire did arise. I think the setbacks as they are reasonable. They probably do take into consideration some fire protection issues, or I would hope that they would, or insurance companies should have a large problem with this going forward. I'm also not concerned of so much the trees coming down, but it's the canopy itself. Also provides a lot of shade back here. This is basically a century-old forest we've got behind us on Longdale Road. The trees are just absolutely beautiful, and they provide so much shade. My whole backyard is full of shade trees and plants, grass, that sort of thing that is going to be full sun after this all happens. But they are, I mean, considering the size of the trees and the shapes, they're not going to be saved if I have a 5-meter backyard from the properties that are going in behind me, as I'm in the less than 30-meter area where these amendments are going to have to be considered. I would also like to know if the sample houses that were included actually provide a true example. So are they all going to be detached homes? Are they going to be semi-detached homes on these lots? That's not necessarily clear. I would also like, in lieu of a natural buffer, which isn't even possible in this situation, if a 7-foot privacy fence could be put along the rear lot line of all of these new houses. I'm going to have 2 houses in my immediate backyard, and in my triangle site, I will have at least 4 or 5. Basically, our lots existing on Longdale Road are 100 by 150 feet. So to have to then, after the fact, get all approval from all of these people to put up a fence, and then considering one person might want a wooden fence, another person's got a chain link fence, I'm going to perhaps have 2 or 3 different types of fencing in my backyard, depending on what could be decided upon. And I would just really like to see this whole area surrounded by a privacy fence, because I don't want to be the lady who has kids running through her yard and I have to worry about my gardens and things like that. And the fact that they've only got 15 feet of backyard on their side and I've got 60 feet in my backyard. I would just really like it privatized. I like having the privacy behind me with the natural trees that's there. That was the big selling point for me to move in onto Longdale Road. And I'm anxious now about it even coming down. It doesn't sit well with me. I'm just gonna cry the whole time. I just know it. Another concern of mine is the whole complete community thing that they keep talking about. On the plans, I've looked at them. I see nothing marked as a playground for these kids that are going to be in a 15-foot backyard. I'm not sure where they're expecting them to play, because they certainly can't play in that backyard. There's no running around in that backyard unless they're expecting them to go on the streets. The bush that surrounds us is full of poison ivy. So, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing in that way that this is coming down and being replanted, but they certainly can't play in the natural growth areas that are being conserved here. So I would also like to see some playground areas perhaps being brought into this situation that the kids would be able to play in and have some space to run in safely. There's also a toboggan hill, which is, they're few and far between in Wasaga Beach, but we do have an inland sand dune, and which is why this is the environmentally protected zone. At the bottom of it, there is a Rogers box that was just installed a couple years ago. The kids still slide down this hill. And I would like to see if this does go through, maybe that moved. Right now there's a traffic cone over top of this box so that the kids don't hit it, so they can see it. But as I said, perhaps that could be something that could be considered to add some enjoyment to our community in the winter time, as it is well used. I would also like to see a proper trail system then through the bush. Right now behind me, between myself and Wesley, there is a trail that walks through there. There are multiple dog walkers from the community daily going back through there. There are bicyclists, there are dirt bikers, there are snowmobiles, there's ATVs. It's also a route for this entire back community to access Pioneer gas station to fill up their recreational vehicles, which I know isn't a marked trail system, but it's very much used to stay off of roads like Zoo Park Road, River Road West. They just kind of sneak through here, which is really nice. I don't know if these recreational vehicles are going to be permitted to use the trails that they're proposing, because there are a couple of there's a 6-meter trail, I believe, coming off of Wesley onto Longdale Road, a walking path. I don't know if that could be maybe opened up for snowmobilers, ATVs. It doesn't affect me, but I just know that our community around here does utilize it quite a bit, and I think it's a part of a safety net for these people to get to the gas stations. What else did I want to mention here? Oh, the construction. Is it going to be done in phases? Is there a need? So you've got 4 little areas, tons of trees. I really don't want to see this all clear cut prior to houses being sold. Then something like 2008 happens and the housing industry closes down for a bit just because of a recession that, you know, is currently looming. And now we're left with just open trees, possible, who knows, bankruptcy by the developer, banks not backing them, and now we've lost all of our canopies and nothing's being done. So I would really like to see this done in phases, you know, perhaps a section at a time, or, you know, the section to my east being done, then this section, at least 2 phases, just so they can stay on top of being financially able to complete this project, and just to not have this total destruction all around us. And basically that's all. Oh, there's one other thing. So the hydrological study that is being quoted as creating this non-environmentally protected area, because it once was entirely environmentally protected area. I believe it was done back in the 70s. And I'm just wondering if a new hydrological study of the area has been completed with up-to-date wildlife, trees, that sort of thing, that now exist versus 40 years ago. So that's about all I have to say.
Well, thank you for your comments. I do remember, and I don't know the exact date, but there was a study on the parabolic dune outliers, which includes that area, and that's somewhere on the town website, I believe, still. I'll turn it over if staff or the developer want to make any comment related to that. Please chime in now. To any of that, not just my comment. There's Doug. Go ahead, Doug.
And sorry, this is Jack Krupnik once again from IPS. So I think I'll keep this fairly brief. I mentioned that the draft plan subdivision process does require a number of studies, one of which I believe is a landfill impact assessment, as well as tree preservation plans and landscape plans. So those are still plans that are, some of which are still plans to be submitted to the town. But we are, you know, the lands presently are designated both are designated for residential purposes and single detached dwellings, and they are zoned for such as well. So that is a permitted use on site, but we are here seeking to do minor amendments to the site. And I know that the rear yard was mentioned, I think 5 meters, and we are seeking relief for the rear yard, but it is from 7.6 meters to 7 meters for lots less than 30 meters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Doug, do you have anything? Or yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your reference to the Dune Outlier study is, you've got a good memory. That study was done on behalf of the town by the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, and it looked at both dune structures along the beachfront and inland dune structures. The draft approved plan of subdivision that was shown in the PowerPoint presentations, it showed an interior block, and Jack noted that that block has already been dedicated to the town. That was a requirement of the town when the draft approval was first done, and it was to try to protect that that particular dune. So that's why we took ownership of it as a condition of draft approval.
Thank you for that. Madam Clerk, is that everyone who's signed up to speak?
That's correct, Chair Foster.
From the public. Okay, so now I'll ask members of committee if they have any questions or comments regarding the proposed development. Councillor Belanger.
Yes, thank you, Chair Foster. My one concern that sticks out with me is the lot coverage excluding rear porches. I can't speak for all of council, but certainly over my time on council, I've been contacted by many residents that find out that the small builders decks that are put on their building have already accommodated the full lot coverage. And when they want to put on a little larger, more deck with better utilization, they're not able to do that. And in this case, what is called a minor adjustment, I think, is fairly major. They're going from, I think it was 35 to 45, not including the rear porch. And if we're going to set a precedent for this type of thing, there's many areas in town where they were held to the 35% lot coverage, and where residents were not able to extend their decks at all. And now we would set a precedent that that's not available. The other part of that is that when you're not able to expand your deck, often they put on ground level patios, which again can affect the drainage and runoff because you're again eliminating more green space if that were to occur. So that's one concern I have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anybody else on council? Deputy Mayor Bray, please.
Thank you. Just a quick comment, I guess, to developers. The one resident spoke about the need or the hope that there would be a park included. And again, I think it would be certainly nice to see if there could be some sort of playground equipment or park planned. And also, I would like to see how it connects to the trails, or if there isn't trails that it connects to, that there's some thought from probably Public Works to incorporate the trails, because as the trails go from one end of town to the other, this is our opportunity to make them bigger and better. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kinney, please.
Thank you, Chair Foster. I have to echo the comments of Deputy Mayor Bray and Councillor Boulanger. I did also find going from 35 to 45. I guess it's semantics, minor, major. But if you look at it, quick math, you're looking at around a 20 to 25% change. My math could be wrong, and I apologize for that. However, also, I feel that connectivity in our trail system is very important, not only for a complete community, as we're bouncing that name around, but also for the physical and mental health of our community. You can't beat, and I'm sure Councillor Boulanger would agree, a nice walk through our trail system just releases the tension. Thank you, Chair Foster. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Seeing no other comment from council, I'm going to make a quick comment because I actually lived on Leo Boulevard for 5 years and Golf Course Road for 17. I'm absolutely familiar with that area. In fact, everyone who spoke today is in a place that used to be a green space. So I get the concerns, and I understand the environmental area there and the importance of it. The term minor versus major variance just depends on your point of view. So we want to make sure that we are respectful of the environment first, but respectful of the neighbors, the community, the local community, and the community at large. So all the comments that have been made by everyone today will be sent back to staff and the developer for comment. It will follow the normal process, but let me, because I see the clerk looking at me, let me go back to the script. If there's nothing else from council, comments received today will be considered, and a decision on this application will be made at a future meeting as to whether the committee will recommend the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to proceed further through the approvals process. Anyone receiving notice of public meeting will receive notice of council's decision on this matter. If you did not receive the notice of public meeting and would like to receive a copy of the notice of council's decision, please contact the planning department and leave your name and address to be added to the circulation list, or make written requests to the clerk of the town of Wasaga Beach. Having said that, Councillor Wells, you have a comment, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I held off, Mr. Chair, because it's not specific to this proposal, but I'm looking at our current zoning bylaws and so forth, and I'm looking at how it seems like every single month we are having new proposals come forward, all of which are asking for minor amendments. And I think it was you that made the comment, minor versus major is very much a matter of your own personal perception. But I think as a council, we have to begin to say, what do we want the future of the town to actually look like? As we go through every single month, looking at new applications that are asking for more and more zoning variances, we either need to say no to some of this because we believe the existing zoning is appropriate, or we need to change the zoning bylaws. We need to change it so that we don't have to be putting the developers and ourselves through this every month. It really comes down to a question of what do we want the town in the long term to look like? And then you put the zoning in place and you stick to it. If you keep just making changes and every time it comes up, the change is just a little more than the last change. And so I'm concerned as to what is our real belief in what the town should look like, because I'm not sure we have one at the moment.
Okay, before we get into that conversation, because I think that's a deeper conversation, not related directly to the public meeting that we had. I do agree with you, of course, but I think first we have to terminate this public meeting related specifically to that, and then we have a bigger issue to deal with. Councillor Belanger, please.
Thank you, Chair Foster. And I guess to add to Councillor Wells' comments is just when I look at the number of homes involved and you look at what's being requested on especially the side yard setbacks, you know, we're really talking about the elimination of, you know, one or two homes on the longest stretch and probably one home on the starter stretches to maintain the current setback. And those lots would probably be slightly more desirable and would command a little better price for the developer. So I kind of agree. It's sort of like, how do we jam in the most number of homes? It's okay. Thank you.
Sorry, this is not related to the public meeting that we have, although that is part of the conversation, but it's a much deeper conversation. I think I've read the entire script for the public meeting. I do welcome that conversation later, but if there's nothing else at this point, I will call this public meeting closed. Thank you everyone for their input, and I know we have a new conversation, not a new conversation, a conversation to dig into later. I will then pass it back to the chair, Councillor Kinney, please.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Great public meeting, and I thank everybody who participated in it. And yes, the dialogue will continue at a future date. That being said, we must move forward. 2.2, we have no unfinished business. Sorry, 3.2. 3.3, other agencies, our fire department monthly report. I'll read the motion, get a mover and a seconder, and then we'll introduce the greatest chief in Ontario. That being said, resolve that the community service section of coordinated committee received the August 2021 fire department report for information. May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Belanger moved it and Councillor Wells seconded it. And at that time, I will turn it over to our chief. Please go ahead, chief.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chair, Your Worship, and Council. At the last coordinated committee meeting, when I provided the monthly report, I noted that July had set a new record for the most calls in a month with 174 calls for service. Well, the month of August surpassed that with 195 calls for service. So as you can see, we're very busy. That's averaging 6.3 calls per day. So That's a lot more than what we're used to. So hopefully our call volume starts to decrease, because when we're having calls, somebody's having a bad day. So with respect to notable occurrences, we attended 2 structure fires in August. The first was a detached garage on Sunnydale. We arrived, there was a fire in the soffit extending up into the roof. When we arrived, we also noticed there were a number of items inside the garage. So as hose lines were being deployed, firefighters actually removed a Corvette and 2 snowmobiles, and then the crews were able to quickly knock down the fire. Damage to the structure was not too extensive and will be repairable. The second structure fire, which everyone knows about, was shortly after 12 noon on August 26th on Waterview Road. That's in the Blue Water development located off Beechwood Road. On arrival, we had a fully involved double car garage with the fire extending into the house, and the exposure home next door was also becoming involved. Our first hose lines were used to try and protect the exposure home, but despite our best efforts, the fire did extend into the roof. We also had concerns with the home behind the 2 that were on fire. And at that time, I activated mutual aid, calling for Collingwood's aerial platform to come in. The vinyl siding on the community clubhouse, which was across the road from the two houses on fire, actually melted. So that gives you an idea of the extreme radiant heat we were facing. We had our own aerial ladder truck, 3 pumpers, 2 rescue trucks on scene, and 25 personnel, including the 4 firefighters from Collingwood. Mutual aid was then expanded to include fire crews from Springwater and Clearview to backfill our stations to be ready to respond to any other calls we may have, while our own resources were fully dedicated to these fires. It took a little more than an hour to bring the fires under control, but hotspot extinguishment went on for a few more hours after. There were no injuries to civilians, firefighters, or pets, and surprisingly, no firefighters suffered from heat exhaustion, as that's very common when we're working in extreme summer heat. The OFM was notified, but after 2 separate phone conversations with them, they felt they didn't need to attend and would leave the investigation to us and local OPP. There was no evidence that would suggest the fire was suspicious. However, we were unable to determine the exact cause. We do have some theories and possibilities, but nothing that we can prove with certainty. But again, not suspicious. Other than that, we responded to 5 water-related incidents in August. All of those, I'm happy to report, resulted in a positive outcome. And the fire danger rating is currently at moderate in Wasaga Beach, and we'll be looking at that again depending on how much rain we receive. And that, Mr. Chair, is my monthly report.
Thank you, Chief. And I will open it this time up to Council for their thoughts and comments. Councillor Watson and Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the fire chief. There seemed that, well, we put out a public notice about that the water was a little low in the west end, and for people to, if it was a bit discolored, don't worry about it. There wasn't a public health warning, but could you just address that, because it seems to be a concern of some people in the area about the water getting a little low. I'm presuming this has happened on occasion when you have to use the volume of water that you had to use to extinguish this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. You're right. It has happened in the past. When we draw large volumes of water, we had 2 master streams, they're called. So we had 2 aerial devices pulling a lot of water, a number of hand lines. So it stirs up the system is really quite honestly what it does, and loosens up any sediment. And it's usually, you know, you'll get a bit of orange in the water, a little bit of rust moving through the system. It's not harmful, but it does cause some concern with the residents. And we were quick to get a public notice out to let them know there was no issue, and it was just the fire department drawing a lot of water that caused the system to loosen up some rust, basically.
Go ahead, Councillor Watson, please.
Thank you. Supplementary. Yeah, I think we all see it. If you get your water shut off at the road for any reason to do plumbing, you put it back on again, you have some discoloration that comes through. That's pretty normal. Is there any concern about water volume at all? Because again, that seemed to be, people talking about that. Well, if we have more development, we don't have enough water or something along those lines, which I don't think is correct. But if you could address that, thank you.
Through you again, Mr. Chair. We had lots of water. There was no issue with water volume. And my understanding of our system is we have the capacity for a lot more residents in our community. We're not in a position where we're worried about water volume or water pressure, and we've not had that experience on Firegrounds, any issues.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Wells, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Coincidentally, I was, I guess for want of a better phrase, I was on site during this major fire, and from beginning to at the point where they just started working on hotspots, and had the opportunity to observe our firefighters. And I just want to pass on through the chief how impressed I was by the efficiency with which the firefighters operated, the way that they made every attempt to do whatever they could to save. On their arrival, it was past saving. There's no question about that. All they could do is protect the surrounding area and try to put down the existing fire. But again, the efficiency with which they obviously operated, the cooperativeness that you could observe between the different firefighters and their captains, it was something that made me feel very confident in the skills of our fire department. I'd like the chief to pass that along.
Thank you, Councillor Wells, and I certainly will.
Thank you, Councillor Wells, and kudos to your personnel, Chief. And with your call volume going up and up and up, yeah, it's a tough road, but hopefully come the fall, it'll go down a bit just to give you guys a little bit of ease. That being said, Council, any more thoughts or questions before I call the vote? Not seeing any. All in favor? Thank you. That passed unanimously 7-0. And thank you, Chief. We move into 3.4, our consent agenda. Now I have to ask our Madam Clerk if this is the appropriate time to make 2 comments.
On the reports on the consent agenda, this would be the time.
Thank you. As chair, I'm just going to make some quick reports. I don't see anything pulled. However, that being said, if there is anything pulled, please let me know and we'll pull it at this time. But in lieu of that right now, I'm not seeing anything. I'm going to make a quick comment on 3.5.2 with regards to our correspondence from the Ontario Provincial Police. My quick comment is that it's great to see that we are getting some involvement and some noted thoughts from our Ontario Provincial Police. I've always said the town of Wasaga Beach is unique, and one hat doesn't fit all. As a result of that, you've got to respond to the uniqueness of each of your communities, and I was glad to see that letter, and I thank you for that. My last one would be 3.5.4, which is the CAOs report for the policing of the second quarter. It's great to get the updated reports from our neighbors next door, our OPP detachment. However, I do see that it would really be nice that if somewhere down the road we could ask our individual detachment to represent themselves around the table to express the good work that they're doing. Our CAO is great, but he can't answer those questions. So that would be nice. That being said, those are my comments. And at this time, I'm going to send, thank you so much. I didn't see that. Councillor Watson first, and then Her Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just on your first point about the letter from the OPP. It was nice to see the efforts of our mayor and CAO and all of council, putting the requests out about Wasaga Beach, because we are unique. We're one of the only places in Canada that has a provincial park within our municipal boundaries. We used to get a lot of support from the OPP on long weekends. It was pretty routine. They'd send up the ERT and the TRU teams. This is not at the expense of our Wasaga Beach taxpayers, although we know there's only one taxpayer, but the province always picked that up. And it sort of got lost maybe the last few years. So it's nice to see that brought back to help manage, because the province invites everyone to attend Wasaga Beach and enjoy the beach and the amenities here. And it's nice to have that extra support. So thank you.
Your worship, please.
Thank you. Just similar comments, just to thank our local detachment and those above who did step up. The presence, I think, made a huge difference at our beachfront this summer. I'd make a point on the weekends to stop in and see whoever was looking after the command center. And the feedback that they were getting from those at the beachfront was great. That people felt good to have them there. And as far as presentation or coming to answer questions, different commanders have different styles, and I'm confident though that our current acting commander Andy Tate would be more than happy to come and answer some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Madam Clerk, I hope we didn't go past what we should have done on comments, because I know it got active and I apologize for that. With that being said, not seeing any more comments, I will read the consent agenda. Resolve that the Community Services section of Coordinated Committee hereby receive the September 9th, 2021 consent agenda items 3.4 through 3.6, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately. Not seeing any of those. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Belanger and Councillor Watson. Thank you. And I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. That moves 7-0 unanimously. And going through my section here, I believe it's at this time I would love to turn over the chair to Councillor Watson for Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kinney. We are now in the Public Works section of the Coordinated Committee agenda. We have no deputations or presentations this morning. We have 2 items under unfinished business, and we have no other agency reports at this time. It's also my understanding that nothing has been pulled from the consent agenda. If that's still correct, then I will read the motion. Resolve that the Public Works section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the September 9th, 2021 consent agenda items 4.4 through to 4.6, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately. May I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Belanger and Councillor Kinney. Seeing no other questions, all those in favor? Thank you very much. That is approved unanimously. And that ends the Public Works section of the agenda at this time. Thank you.
All right. If we're good to go ahead, we're going to move into the development section, services section. And again, we've already had the public meeting. There's a few items under unfinished business. We'll get to the consent agenda. Nothing has been pulled, but I will comment that people should be looking again at our numbers for building and planning what's going on. We are continuing to be at a record pace. So that's my comments related to 5.51, 5.52, and anyway. All right, notwithstanding those, well, they're not being pulled, I just commented. So I will read the resolution. Resolved that Development Services section of the Coordinated Committee hereby receives the September 9th, 2021 consent agenda items 5.4 to 5.6, and that all recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately. And as I noted, there were none of those. So I'll look for a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kinney and her worship, all those in favor? And that seems to be carried unanimously. Thank you very much. I'll flip it over to the Deputy Mayor for General Government. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We have certainly picked up the pace today. I'm just flipping to the right page in the agenda. There are no items on the general government consent section of the agenda today. There's no deputations, presentations, and public meetings. So I will jump straight to other matters, which is the CAO's verbal update regarding COVID-19. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our report will be brief this morning. I am joined by our Deputy Fire Chief, Craig Williams, who will be providing the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit update, as well as our Communications Officer, which will provide an overview of provincial announcements that have been made over the last week. And then I'll follow with the command team update. So, Madam Chair, our Communications Officer, Mike Jennings, will commence the presentation.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. As the CAO mentioned, it's a brief presentation, and I just have 2 points that I wanted to share with members of committee this morning. September 1, we heard that Ontario will launch a vaccine passport system, and that's going to start September the 22nd. The approach will focus on what the government calls high-risk indoor public settings where face coverings cannot always be worn. So places such as restaurants, meeting and event spaces, and sports facilities. So we're continuing to get more information from the province on what that looks like. And I would encourage people to visit the Government of Ontario website and to keep an eye on the media for information about what that passport system will look like. The other thing I wanted to mention just quickly is that students return to class this week. So elementary schools, the Catholic schools in our community, they're all back in action with in-class learning, and that's a great thing for staff and students. And that concludes my portion of the COVID report for everyone.
Thank you. Deputy Fire Chief.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bray, members of council. Provincially, there have been 571,000 cases of COVID-19, including over 555,000 recoveries and 9,569 deaths. There are 167 COVID positive patients in ICUs across the province, including 99 on ventilators, and the provincial COVID-19 testing positivity rate is currently 3.3%. To date, Ontario has conducted over 17.3 million COVID-19 tests, and provincially, 84% of people over the age of 12 have received a single dose of COVID-19 vaccine, while 77% have received 2 doses. Regionally within Simcoe Muskoka, the total number of cases is now 13,063, with 12,562 recoveries and 256 deaths. There were 204 new cases of COVID-19 reported to the health unit in the last week, which is 38% higher than the 148 cases reported for the week of August the 22nd. There are currently 15 individuals who are hospitalized in Simcoe County, and the 7-day moving average of COVID-19 cases in our region is 27.9. The percent positivity rate for testing is 2.5%, and there are 6 active outbreaks across Simcoe Muskoka, including 2 community settings, 1 education setting, and 3 workplaces. Within Simcoe Muskoka, 83% of those over 12 years old have received 1 dose of vaccine, while 76% have received 2 doses. And in Wasaga Beach, we now have a total of 293 cases, including 2 current individuals in the hospital, 12 who are isolating in the community, 5 deaths, and 274 recoveries. 20 of the cases were listed in the last 14 days, with the most recent case being listed on September 6th. And for our vaccination rates, 84.4% of our community over 12 years old is vaccinated with 1 dose, and 78.1% is vaccinated with 2 doses. These numbers are slightly surpassing both the regional and the provincial vaccination rates. The last part of my update is just in regards to vaccine, and I wanted to share with you that our community continues to make some positive progress with our vaccination rates. During our Memories of Summer pop-up clinic, there was a total of 78 first doses of vaccine administered, as well as 48 second doses. And on Tuesday evening at the Recplex, there were 87 first doses of vaccine and 80 second doses provided. So this is a change in that I'm sure the recent announcement from the province regarding passports has encouraged a number of new individuals who were previously not vaccinated to consider becoming vaccinated. For our community who is looking for clinics, there are clinics tonight in Collingwood at the New Life Church from 3:30 to 9 o'clock. There are pop-up clinics in Elmville and Stayner next Monday from 4 till 7. On Tuesday, there'll be a clinic at the Collingwood Galaxy Cinema from 3 to 7. And the clinic returns back to Wasaga Beach next Thursday from 4 to 9 p.m. at the Recplex. And I would encourage community members to visit simcoemuskokahealth.org for more information about these clinics. This includes my update. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question to our Deputy Chief. When they talk about the passports, the vaccine passports, and for travel specifically, people who've had mixed, AstraZeneca and something else, or they're not, my understanding is they're not, they don't qualify in certain countries or certain areas because of the mixed nature, not recognizing one vaccine over another. Do you know if there's going to be, or if there is timing for either a booster vaccine, or what the conversation is on that right at the moment?
Thank you, Councillor Foster, and through Deputy Mayor Bray. I don't have that information specifically, although I have heard the same concerns. I do know that the health unit has now approved the booster shot for a very, very limited of select high-risk individuals and are beginning the process of that. I suspect that in time, the booster shot will become available to a greater number of individuals, but unfortunately, I have not received any update from the health unit regarding the timelines of that and when that might occur.
Seeing no other questions, Mr. CAO, did you have a wrap-up comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. If our Deputy Chief could turn his video on for a second. Please, I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the organization to the Deputy Fire Chief, our facility staff, and our public works staff on their efforts to make the mass vaccination clinics at the Recplex operate so smoothly. We were complimented extensively by the Public Health Unit and the South Georgian Bay Community Health Center on how efficient our staff, how friendly our staff were in terms of setting up the mass vaccination clinic. And as I announced, I think last week, those clinics have been disbanded. And I felt it appropriate to acknowledge the efforts of our Deputy Chief and the staff involved in setting up the clinic. I also have some further comments as well, Madam Deputy Mayor, if I could. So the command team met last Tuesday, and the focus of the meeting was reviewing a draft vaccine policy for town staff. I'm going to ask Deputy Chief Williams to speak to the highlights of the draft. Him and our manager of human resources are working on this policy, and he can provide the highlights to council.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. CAO. I do have some notes here prepared just to keep myself on track and make sure that I don't miss any of the details, because this is an important policy that has a significant impact on both our employees, but also the customers who attend our various locations. So the policy itself is currently being finalized, and we're expecting to have it completed and sent out to all staff early next week. We are creating this policy in consultation with CUPE, the Wasaga Beach Professional Firefighters Association, as well as our Health and Safety Committee. And the purpose of the policy is to implement some additional measures to manage the health and safety impacts of COVID-19 within the workplace. So the command team, we've conducted an assessment of the risk of transmission for our employees in consultation with the health unit, and we've determined that our workplace faces a moderate risk of virus transmission. This policy will recognize that the scientific and the medical approach to controlling the virus continues to evolve, and it will respect that employees have a right to make an informed decision about their personal health care, including the decision to become vaccinated. We will be strongly encouraging all employees to receive the vaccine, and we will be requiring unvaccinated employees to be subjected to some additional precautionary measures to ensure the safety of both themselves and the employees that they work with. Employees will be required to provide evidence of their vaccination status to the Human Resource Department, and any employee who does not submit proof of their vaccination status or who are unable to become vaccinated will be treated as unvaccinated employees for the purpose of this policy. Unvaccinated employees will be required to wear masks in all areas, including non-public areas of the workplace, whenever they're in the same room as another employee, regardless of physical distancing or any other public health measure that is in place. And this measure is there to protect both the unvaccinated employee as well as other employees. Should an outbreak occur, the unvaccinated employees will be subjected to other precautionary measures, which may include additional PPE, modified duties or reassignment of duties, alternate work locations, or required use of vacation and sick time. And I just wanted to confirm for everybody that under no circumstances will an employee face any degree of intimidation, coercion, bullying, or any other negative behavior based on their decision to become vaccinated or not. The municipality standpoint is that we will support our employees with their decision making. The policy will be subject to ongoing review and modification, and we will of course be updating it if required as the pandemic continues to evolve. So that's my brief overview of the policy, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Councillor Kinney.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. And it's great to see policy evolving in a positive way. What I'm hearing from you is you're trying to support everybody in their endeavor to be a productive and active workplace, and I think that's great. First comment is I think, and I could be wrong, but I think there should be a strong message to say that even if you're double vaccinated, you can still opt out to wear a mask. There's nothing wrong with wearing a mask. It'll stop transmission of everything else too. So nothing wrong with that. And my last comment, Madam Chair, is we on council may not be part of the workforce in staff hall, but we visit through there. Is there a notation and an inclusion for council to prove to human resources that we've got our double vaccination? I'm just thinking of leading from the top. And those are my comments, please.
Deputy Chief.
Thank you. So, and great comments. Thank you very much. So we plan on the finalized version of this policy to address how this will impact not only members of council, but we also have various positions in the town, including students. We have volunteers, we have contractors, and we're just looking at what is the impact on those individuals and ourselves by applying this policy to them as well. But we do intend on including them in this policy.
Thank you. Councillor Belanger, you're next.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bray. I had the same question about council, and probably just to be proactive, I'll provide that information to our HR manager. But my other question is that certainly in some of the policies that I'm hearing on the news is mandatory testing on a weekly basis of non-vaccinated staff was a common requirement. I just wondered if that was discussed and whether it was decided that it wasn't necessary, or thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belanger. Yes, that was discussed actually a number of times and at quite a bit of length. We've also received some information from other municipalities on that subject. There will be municipalities that are requiring antigen testing to be performed for unvaccinated individuals. There certainly is some that are not, and at this point our position is that we will not be requiring it. However, that is subject to review going forward. There are a number of challenges with the antigen testing, just the logistics of delivering that on a daily basis and the number of staff that we have, exactly how we have that look. We also know that there are some false positive test results that come from antigen testing, which may at times create more of a challenge than what we need. We feel quite strongly that the current set of guidelines that we have in place to protect our employees is sufficient, as well as we can demonstrate at this point that it seems to be working quite well. And for those reasons, we have opted, not to implement that process right now. We did spend a fair amount of time looking and evaluating our level of risk in our municipality, and where some levels of government, such as the County of Simcoe, who operates both a paramedic service and a long-term care facility, they are at high risk for transmission in their workplace because they obviously are accepting patients who they know have COVID into their workplace. They are at a higher risk of transmission than what our typical office setting would be. So it makes sense that they may have a slightly different approach than we do. But in saying that, I think we need to continually reevaluate our stance and our policy and be prepared to update it, because we don't know exactly what this fourth wave is going to look like. And if at any point in time the risk assessment changes, then we may need to implement new precautionary measures.
Thank you very much. Are there any more comments or questions? Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the Deputy Chief. At some point, if the municipality decides to start holding in-person council meetings, committee meetings, that sort of thing, will there be a separate policy for that? If we to protect the workforce in Wasaga Beach or in Town Hall, if we open it to the public, what precautions may be there? Would that extend to people also having to be double vaccinated to attend in person? That type of thing as we go forward would be my question right now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, yes, absolutely. We would be developing our own internal policy on how to deal with it. But as it stands currently, the provincial passport system does apply to meeting spaces. So unless we see changes from the province, a council chambers would be a public meeting space, and individuals entering those chambers would have to provide evidence through their passport of being double vaccinated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any final comments or questions? Mr. CAO, did you want the last word?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I have two things further that I want to update committee on. Firstly, the local managers of municipal facilities in Simcoe County met yesterday to discuss a number of matters pertaining to the operation of facilities. Town staff participated in that meeting, and the command team will be getting an update at its meeting next week. You may recall we talked last time about the use of showers, the canteen being open, that kind of thing, and I understand that those matters were discussed at this meeting, so we'll get further update next week. Finally, we're assessing the operational impacts of the vaccine passport system being implemented September 22nd. Questions such as how will passports be checked, and who will be responsible for enforcement of passport verification. And so these are important subjects that have come up in conversations at the CAO level. And certainly from the town's perspective, we want to have our position in place prior to the 22nd of September, when it's going to be a requirement that to enter into a number of facilities that the town operates, that that passports be shown. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to take any questions that members of council may have.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, I will read the motion that the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee received the September 9th, 2021 verbal COVID-19 update from the CAO for information. If I could have a mover, Councillor Belanger, and a seconder, Councillor Foster. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Today we have no items in our closed session agenda. And with that, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you and have a great weekend.